continue this conversation with, the other big news that came out in the last 2 days. Ben Roethlisberger on the latest episode of his podcast, Footballin' with All Steelers, had some very interesting things to say about Matt Canada, the way Matt Canada went about coaching the offense. He kind of made it known and admitted that Canada wasn't always, hey, I'm going to go work with the quarterbacks and it's my job to be this close with Ben Roethlisberger or Kenny Pickett. It was more so like, hey, go work with Mike Sullivan. That's your quarterback's coach. I'm just going to be the coordinator. This is what he had to say about the situation. Right or wrong, maybe it was just the way he does it. Maybe he just didn't want to do it with me. I don't really know that. That was the first time I felt like I wasn't working directly with the coordinator. It seems weird. Maybe that is why Kenny feels more comfortable with Mike Sullivan. Maybe the same thing was going on where Matt was more removed. I'm the coordinator. I'll coordinate. You work with Sully. Later in the conversation, he said quarterback coaches are the go-between when you are butting heads with the coordinator. I've always worked closely with the coordinator, even when I had a quarterback coach. I didn't feel that way with Matt. It almost felt like Matt wanted to let the quarterback coach me. I feel like big, strong words from Ben Roethlisberger on this one, especially considering, Kenny Pickett was probably the only lifeline Matt Canada had towards the end of this one. Steven, we'll start with you. You hear those words. What were your thoughts on the situation? Does it add any clarity about what was going on with Matt Canada, Kenny Pickett, in the offense?
I guess clarity might not be the word, but I think it might explain a couple of things. When Ben Roethlisberger is your quarterback, I feel like the situation's a little different. You don't need someone to develop him as closely. That guy was pretty much a finished product. With Kenny, it's a completely different story. You need someone there. I feel like as a young quarterback, you need an older mentor to kind of always be there for you and to always be able to answer questions and to always be kind of tied into what the rest of the offense is doing. At least I feel like, and Matt Canada wasn't there. If he wasn't willing to be there, wasn't, willing to, or just in the position to stand right by Kenny's side and bring him along all the way through this process, that's a little concerning. Not as concerning now that he's gone, but I don't know. It just feels like it feels like kind of ignoring a pretty big responsibility for the offensive coordinator. As soon as they brought Kenny in, felt like it was pretty clear that, his development was kind of paramount to the success of the organization moving forward. Obviously there's an offense to coordinate and there's a lot of players who participate in the offense, but look, the quarterback is the focal point of it. It's the most important position on the field. It is a delicate position to deal with. It's a position that requires a lot of developing and a lot of work. People rarely come out of college as a perfect quarterback. They need help to develop. So not kind of having the full brain trust behind Kenny is an interesting move. And I would argue one that didn't actually work out, if that's how it actually played out in practice.
Yeah, I agree. Like if the way I looked at it is Kenny is the most important piece to this puzzle. It's the most important piece to your success as an offensive coordinator. Maybe he was a little bit more tied in than he was with Ben Roethlisberger, but it just didn't make the whole you get coached by the quarterback's coach. I'm not going to work that closely. Kind of, I don't know, put a strange taste in my mouth as in like, isn't your quarterback going to be the one that you develop an offense around because he's the guy that's the most important piece to the puzzle? But I guess maybe Canada didn't think that way. Nick, when you heard this, watched this, what were your thoughts on Big Ben's words?
Was not shocked in the slightest because of how that offense has been throughout the time when, he was with Roethlisberger and with Kenny Pickett. It didn't matter who the quarterback was. The middle of the field was always so they were not using it at all under Canada. Not just that. I get why they didn't use play action under Ben Roethlisberger. It was not something Roethlisberger was always the most comfortable doing, and I get it. He was more comfortable, working out a shotgun. Kenny Pickett is a guy who ran so much play action coming out and is so good at that, and yet they barely use it at all And
Yeah.
it explains everything, because they almost have Kenny doing the things that he's not the most comfortable with. And I'm just like, is there any communication going on between the coordinator and quarterback on this thing? And, Kenny was always, sticking up for Canada. He's going to say the right thing as always.
Yeah.
And, you want that in your franchise quarterback if he is the franchise quarterback, obviously. But
Yeah.
like, you can't have that level of distance between a young developing quarterback and like an offensive coordinator. I can maybe understand, like, a veteran quarterback, they might be like more prepared for this type of thing. Some coaches could be a little more hands off, and then they defer it to their quarterbacks coaches. And sometimes it works out, but there are coordinators who are way better than Canada that can
Yes.
get away with that type of stuff because they have a great system and things work. Like, they're innovators. They're not just guys who borrow from around the league. And those are the exceptions of all play callers. And even then, they still have to figure out if their players are comfortable enough. There's a difference between like a Kyle Shanahan and an Andy Reid. Andy Reid kind of like, what he does is he tries to give his players as much autonomy on that offense, as much input as they can get. And Kyle Shanahan, he's kind of more of, I don't want to say a dictator, but he's more hands off, and he's more of like, this is how I want it done, and it works out for him. They both have different styles. Canada is not that guy. You're not that guy, pal. That is the way I would try to just describe that. That whole relationship is, he's not good. He didn't have a good enough scheme, and he was hands off with his quarterback. I mean, that's just, he wrote his own obituary there. I mean,
it may be getting cool outside, but it's red hot on the field. So there's no better time than now to announce that today we've partnered with DraftKings, an official partner of the NFL. And thanks to DraftKings, we're bringing you even closer to the action. Right now, new customers who bet $5 will get $150 in bonus bets instantly. You heard that right, instantly. But that's not all. If you're already a DraftKings customer, you get a no-sweat same-game parlay. Get a bonus bet back if your same-game parlay / same-game parlay X doesn't hit. Max reward limits do apply. And if you're a multi-sport bettor, no worries. DraftKings allows you to combine multiple bets for a shot at an even bigger payout. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. New customers who use our promo code ALLSteelers and bet $5 will get $150 in bonus bets instantly. That's promo code ALLSteelers only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Yeah, no, that's exactly what it is. Like, from what I heard after Canada left, is that the Steelers, it wasn't Canada and all the coaches coming together to formulate a game plan. It was Canada has a game plan, you follow that game plan. And that's kind of why, adjustments were never made, is because Canada kind of viewed it as, this is my game plan, it's going to work eventually. I feel like, yeah, just like you said, like, some coaches are good enough to make that happen. I kind of put blame in a number of places. Like, okay, if you acknowledge that this is how Matt's going about things, and he believes that he doesn't have, like, he isn't, I don't know what the word is. Yeah, exactly. Like, it's his job and only his job to come up with this idea and run the offense. It's a little bit on Mike Tomlin or whoever else to be like, hey, pal, look, this isn't working. You're not there yet. Maybe one day, cool, but for right now, let's try to figure this thing out. I feel like to wait 2.5 years before somebody was like, okay, let's come together. Let's have some more voices in this room was a little ridiculous.
Yeah, no,
but it makes a ton of sense. Go ahead.
I think we can all agree that even just looking at the product on the field, it was way past time. But the fact that, like, there was all this dissonance and distance between Canada and the coaches and even the players, I mean, how do you not rectify a situation like that? I mean, it's a bit of an indictment on Tomlin. I love Mike Tomlin, obviously, but he does have his flaws. I think he was almost too loyal to Canada to a fault here.
Oh, he always. I mean, me and Steven have had this conversation more than once about how Tomlin was just like I mean, the way Tomlin avoids problems it's toxic. It's actually toxic. Like, it's crazy to listen to a guy talk about things like not living in your fears and we're going to do this and adversity and all that, and then completely ignore the issues because he believes in his guys so much that it's a fault. I mean, we know the benefit of this, but Stephen, what's the confidence? Like, you come together, you now have a coaching staff that is working hand in hand. I mean, Eddie Faulkner said it yesterday. It was the entire offensive staff that came up with the game plan. Like, every single person was in that room coming up with ideas and putting together what they could. Do you look at this now as like, well, that maybe this is a rebirth of Kenny Pickett? Like, maybe this is the first time that an offense is actually built to Kenny Pickett outside of, hey, let's roll him to the left because he likes to roll to the left, and that is all we're going to do to benefit this guy.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? I mean, so it's been one game against a pretty decent defense, but I don't know if I'm ready to say, Kenny Pickett's back or anything, or Kenny Pickett's been reborn, but I just wonder why this stuff wasn't happening in the first place. It's like a pretty obvious thing, but just why wasn't the entire offensive coaching staff which works with the offense every day completely involved in building it?
Yes.
So I don't know. I mean, look, Kenny looked good in his first game with the new kind of offensive coaching staff and the new organization. I guess I just, I didn't expect any steps forward, like literally any, when after Matt Canada got fired. So I was pretty surprised to see them, despite only putting up 16 points, really take some meaningful steps forward. So I feel a little lost. I feel like I don't know what to expect from Kenny because he still is the quarterback that he was. It's just, I feel like we're not going to actually know. We're not going to actually get a full answer as to how bad, how much Canada dragged this offense back until we're a few weeks down the road and we get a little bit of separation from it.
Yeah. Nick, let me ask you this. Do you watch that game? What did you see that stuck out to you as, oh, this is instant changes? You know what I mean? Like, this is instant improvements of, this is no longer Canada's offense.
So biggest thing was when they came out and did a play action seam shot to Pat Fryermuth.
Yeah, that was a big middle finger right to Canada. 100%.
Yeah, no, legitimately, like, the thing that drove me insane about their play action usage under Canada is it was always like not setting up big plays or taking linebackers out of the middle of the field. It was always towards the sideline and a lot of these like rollout situations, and it drove me up a wall. Benjamin Solak of the Ringer broke it down like the week Canada got fired, and he did a terrific job of just breaking it down. And just he not literally just breaking it down, but he broke down as he was watching the film because it was that bad with the design and just like everything going on there. And that bad that plays in from the offensive design, when you get good offensive design, like in the right situation, it's like, and then Kenny doesn't hit it, you say to yourself, is it Kenny? Is it Matt Canada? And then you watch Kenny like this past week. Obviously, there's still room for growth in that area, but like it felt like he knew the coverages they were throwing at him. Like there was an instance where they called double posts versus quarters coverage, and he knew he had quarters. Like he threw the ball. It should have been a touchdown to Deontay Johnson. But Tomlin didn't challenge, but we don't talk about that so much. And he had that exact, like, he looked that down. I remember this was to start the season against Cleveland. He looked down a quarters beater, and they were in pre-snap. They were in pre-snap, one high coverage. They didn't even rotate, and he was just glued to it. And I was just like, okay, clearly there's more hands-on direction going on here because Kenny actually knows what he's looking at pre-snap for once. And that's the biggest difference I saw, aside from the tight end usage in the middle of the field, play action. I mean,
Do you think that comes from Faulkner's game plan? Do you think that comes from Sullivan being in his ear? Where do you think that comes from? That he's able to read things, that he was able to read things. I don't want to say that this is a definitive going to change, but that he was able to read things in that game better than he's been.
I think it's just a collective. It's just coaching, working together. It's no one's egos driving the ship. And I think that's the most important part. Sullivan's hands-on with Pickett. Faulkner tries to develop the game plan. He relays it with Mike Sullivan. Sullivan calls the plays because he has experience as a play caller. And I think it's just working well together, at least for the first game without Matt Canada, getting over 400 yards of offense. I mean,
yeah,
that's definitely something. And I mean, the performance they had on offense, it was kind of weird because you said to yourself they could kind of have scored more that week if it wasn't for some of the turnovers in some of these situations. And it was like, you love the process, and then the results just they weren't quite there, if that makes sense, on the scoreboard. But yeah. I was at least encouraged. I definitely don't want to overreact, though, after 1 week. I want to see how this goes to end the season. This is Kenny Pickett's audition. He needs to prove to the coaching staff, hey, I'm that guy, and I'm gonna be way better now on without Canada, and you can trust me. You don't have to draft a guy going in, or maybe Faulkner and Sullivan, they get the job or something. But I think they need to keep looking outside, obviously. But I'm overall encouraged, but I'm cautious.
Yeah, I agree. Steven, let's ask this before we move on. One final question here: is a 2-coordinator system? Could that be a long-term? Because there are a lot of people out there that, Ben reacted to it, said, "What the hell's going on?" Eddie Faulkner said it worked smooth. Is a 2-coordinator situation? Can you see? Can it work? Can you see them actually doing it?
I think it can work. I don't think it's ideal, though. I don't think it's ideal to kind of put, extra work on a position coach's plate. I just like all the stuff we've talked about, I feel like is possible with a full-time offensive coordinator and, Faulkner coaching the running backs and Sullivan coaching the quarterbacks. Like, we don't need, I don't know. I don't think you need to keep this thing in place to continue to have, collaboration between the entire offensive staff, which it seems like has really helped. So, is it workable? Yeah. I don't think it's ideal, though, and I don't think it really should be what the Steelers are looking for going forward. And I doubt it is what they're really going to look at. I mean, even if they keep one of these guys in the job, I feel like it's going to be just one of these guys.
Yeah. I agree. I don't know. The Steelers do weird things all the time, and you just watch them, and you're just like, it's just the Steelers.
It would just feel kind of not lazy might not be the right word, but just like a little bit of a cop-out, like doing the safe thing, the conservative thing. If they decide to keep these two in their current positions, like
Mike Tomlin, man, he never lives in his fears, except for always
when he does,
except for when he does. And I could see that. I could see this being, but I agree. Like, it doesn't make any sense, and it just feels like this was the easiest route. Let's not upset anybody. Let's keep it going. But you never know.